Hello and welcome to Nutrition Fundamentals, a review on general nutrition principles. During today's discussion, I will be reviewing the definition of health and offer an alternative definition. Consider the core reasons for food and eating. Briefly review the process of digestion and energy utilization. And then we'll be encouraging you, especially if you are on the path towards a healthier you or progressing goals on your own, to consider taking a step back and thinking about the bigger picture of prioritization, and checking in to see if there are maybe other goals or focus areas to target that would better support your progress. My name is Monique Gallant. I am a registered dietitian in the state of Kentucky. I have been working with intellectually disabled adults for the past 8 years. My undergraduate degree is in kinesiology or exercise science, and my graduate degree is in nutrition and health promotion. I often focus on the areas intersecting movement and fuel, and often bring this to my client sessions. I also wanted to share with you my contact information. Please feel free to reach out anytime, especially with any follow up questions regarding the topics and material reviewed today. So, to begin, I wanted to reconsider the definition of health. The textbook definition that we often go by is the absence of disease or the state of being free from illness or injury. However, I refuse to consider this very narrow definition of health, especially within the population that I serve. I don't believe that just because an individual is balancing multiple diagnoses and navigating, the best treatment plans across different areas of health, that they can't establish a healthy life, right? So a lot of the individuals that I work with are navigating comorbidities, psychiatric diagnoses, behavioral diagnoses, and then on top of that, they need to eat and move every day. And I think that if we expand or broaden the definition of health, we do ourselves and all individuals of every ability the justice of considering their life a contributing um, impact to society, to um, the, the bigger picture. And I think that we need to consider all aspects of our life when we think about health and well being. I think that if we are too narrow in that scope, then we are going to be a really big battle against the way these different areas of our life interact with one another. How many times have you come home from a long day of work and just wanted to sit down to some comfort food, right? So we have to consider each aspect of the human life and the human experience in order to effectively pursue health in whatever way you define it, right? And I like to consider health a balance of these different dimensions and balance within these different dimensions, right? So, where imbalance exists, disease grows. And that I think holds true in any context that you may be considering it. At the bottom here, there is a website. extension if you'd like to check it out, where you can assess your individual wellness as a measure of all different aspects of life. And so here's life. What is it to be alive? At the very smallest unit of living, we are a bunch of cells. Cells are what take in the nutrients from our food. They require rest and reset. They are constantly being produced and then they die, and they are in um, forever flux inside of our body. And those cells, they come together, similar cells come together to create tissues, and those tissues form organs. The organs must work with each other to then balance out organ systems. And then all those organ systems are molded into a nice form of a human body. So when we are eating, drinking, breathing, the final destination of those units is in our stomach or our lungs. It's in the individual cells throughout our body. We are concerned with the health and well being of all these cells, not just the heart or the lungs or the brain. Granted, those are important, but their health is usually reflective of the entire system, right? We can't separate them out. We are one. We are one human body. And so when we think about energy, we don't typically think about the human body. However, we need energy to live, to move, right? In order to live, we need to eat food. Food is our fuel. And so the best way I like to create this imagery is to think about a vehicle and gasoline. If the gas tank's empty, the car's not going to go. We need to have food or gasoline in our gas tanks in order to move. Side note, what's also important is the battery. If we don't have a fully charged battery, then we can't use the gasoline to move. And in this scenario, we consider micronutrients the battery, which may be even more important than macronutrients, but we will get to that. We use energy every day to move, right? Movement is the essence of life. And the definition to work is to move something over a distance. We are moving blood, we are moving air, we are moving our heart, our lungs every single second of every single day. Even when we sleep, we never stop working, right? And so I encourage you to think which side of the term you are on. Are you eating to live or are you living to eat? Right? General recommendations for movement are 100, it should be 50 minutes of moderate intense exercise daily or 10,000 steps per day. And that's just for health maintenance. That is not training for a marathon or going to be the next Ironman. This is just to maintain a high quality and uh, longevity of your life. Exercise, whatever activity that you enjoy, I fully believe should be something that you do look forward to. Even if it challenges you, even if you're not the best at it, it should be something that you find pleasure in and don't engage in simply because you think you have to. There's so many different types of exercise and fitness regimens out there. No one is better than another, right? Just do something. Anything is better than nothing. So this is the uh, my Harvard School of Public Health My Plate. This is based off of the USDA's revision of the My Pyramid, which became the My Plate. Um, I personally don't like to reference the USDA's My Plate simply because where water is highlighted here in the right-hand corner, they identify dairy. Dairy is not a necessary component of a balanced diet. And they also fail to identify oil or fat as a part of a healthy diet. Um, Fat does not make us fat. And is actually an extremely important part of a balanced diet. So we can't fail to lose that out and leave that out. And oftentimes we don't consider fat when we are preparing a meal or planning a meal. It's kind of a side note, right? And oftentimes it comes in the form of a saturated fat, which is not going to help or support or promote, healthy cardiovascular health. We do want to increase our consumption of unsaturated fatty acids, especially omega-3 fatty acids, where we want the proportion to be way closer 1 to 1 than it is um, right now in the typical American diet, which is like 16 to 1. Um, we also see that the sections of the plate are different, and that's to represent the different portions or recommended intake of serving sizes per day. For fruits, they recommend 2 servings of fruits daily, 3 vegetables daily, and whole grains. However, I cannot teach anyone what a whole grain is because the way that we identify them here in the United States is also a side note. It's an afterthought. It's a brand of a grain on the front packaging of a product. Nowhere is it mentioned in the nutrition label or really in the ingredients. We don't know how many whole grains there are, and the recommendations are worded in such a way that it's not applicable. It's not realistic. And so I often change or opt to change whole grains to just a larger category of starches and encourage everyone to get starches from more whole food sources, right? So we are looking at things like oatmeal, quinoa, barley, right? We want more grains, more foods that come closer from the earth, right? And then healthy protein or just protein. I hate qualifying or as something as healthy or unhealthy because it's just not true, right? Especially here in the United States, we have fudged up so much in terms of our produce and how it's grown and produced that I think that we are even at a place where we're questioning the true nutrition of things that should are whole foods that should have the most nutrition in them. So, anyways, side note, healthy, unhealthy means nothing to me. It should mean nothing to you as well. Protein it can come from meat or animal-based products or plant-based products. But we should be consuming meat or protein, I should say, at every snack and or meal throughout the day. That helps to regulate blood sugars. Um, I think that typically what happens in the American diet is that we overload proteins at one meal and then we don't have enough throughout the rest of the day. And so we end up eating too much protein that we can't actually utilize because what happens to excess proteins is we pee it out. And then we are having these huge glycemic shifts throughout the day because those meals are missing protein and just so dense in sugar and carbohydrates. And so protein is an important part of a balanced meal and or snack all day long. Okay. So here's the shocker. Our food comes from 2 different places. It comes from plants or it comes from animals. As you can see, the foods here on this screen all come from plants. Yes, that means that the same thing that is making up your Halloween candy is making up your fruits and vegetables. And at the core of that is a carbon compound called glucose or sugar, right? When plants grow, they go through the process of photosynthesis. And one product of that, as we learned in school, is oxygen. The other product that we didn't learn about is sugar. And so all foods, all plant based foods have sugar. They are made of sugar. However, the story doesn't end there. It gets a little bit more detailed and a little more complicated. Sugar can become starch by bonding with other sugars, and then it can also become fiber, which is a different way of bonding with other sugars. But at the heart of these foods, they are all made of sugar. Now, there is a big difference between the candies that you see on the left-hand side of the screen to the fruits that you see on the right-hand side. Yes, they are both sugar. Fruit is considered nature's candy. However, when you eat a fruit, you're eating a whole lot less sugar and you're eating a whole lot more water. There are a lot more micronutrients, antioxidants, phytochemicals that are inside fruits that you're not going to get from candy, not to mention fiber. Fiber, if I were to identify one magic pill, it would be fiber. However, it's not simple enough as going to the store and buying a Fiber One supplement. Fiber is going to be in the most balance and in the most use when it comes from whole food sources because food has a synergy to it, right? Food is meant to be diverse. It's meant to have a variety of nutrients and they work cohesively together in order to optimize absorption, meaning in order for us to get the nutrients in the foods into our system in the best and most efficient way possible, we need to consume them as whole foods and not as supplements. Supplements have a place, they have a time, and in some cases, they can be necessary. However, we always want to start with getting them from our food first. So I love to stick with this quote. If it came from a plant, then eat it. If it was made in a plant, then don't. Goal setting. First, when developing a goal, I encourage you to think of your motivation. What is your why? Why do you want to achieve this goal? Are you scared of the potential health consequences if you don't? Is there someone in particular you idolize and you're looking up to? Is it just something you're being curious about and you want to investigate further? I think it's important to understand your why before you start the how. And I think that's because when times get tough, and they will get tough, consistency is the key to success, but also our demise, right? And so when things get tough, we need to be able to reflect back onto why we started in the first place. Because as much as we think that progress is a straight line from start to finish, it's often not, right? It often comes with reverting back to old habits, to relapses, to periods of noncompliance, right? And so we our progress looks more like a up and down slope than it does a straight line. We have periods of time where we're spot on and we're doing things just as planned and we're feeling great. And there are lows where that's just not going to happen because, right, life exists. So keep in mind what your goal is and why you started it. And then I think it's really important to outline some very specific goals, right? Saying that you want to run a marathon is very different than actually running a marathon. And in order to train for running a marathon, you must break down the different aspects of your training. If you're starting from a couch potato and trying to go to a marathon, you might start with just getting up off the couch. right? You might start with just going for a walk every day. You might start with tracking your walks every day, right? Because your training's going to get very complex and complicated, and it's going to be hard to remember those things. So, if you're someone that has a very difficult time reflecting on your self behaviors, your individual behaviors, then a journal is definitely encouraged. Um, I think this is true, especially of diet. We tend to fail to think about the snack that we had on the way somewhere, or the piece of candy that we picked up at the doctor's office, or that bite of something that your friend gave you, right? We have a difficult time sticking to the reality of it because we think we have these patterns and trends, but realistically, those patterns and trends aren't as sure as we'd like them to be. So, picking up SMART goals is definitely a way of um, igniting progress, right? So, SMART stands for specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound. I like the acronym the way it is. Attainable to me is that it's within our ability, right? Um, as and opposed to realistic means that it's something that we individually could accomplish, right? Uh, Almost anyone could go out and run a 5K, right? So maybe the goal is to run a 5K, but the reality is that one person might be starting with walks and the other person might be running a mile already, right? So what is it that's realistically available to you? And then put a timestamp on that, right? If you're saying that you're going to go walking every day at 8 o'clock, then make a note of it. And then after a month, see how many times you successfully went for a walk. Are you comfortable with that number? Is that something you want to maintain? Or do you want to improve? Right? So having a cap on your time limits, I think is important in terms of reflection. It's great and necessary to be able to spend some time away from social media and distractions to focus on yourself, to focus on how far you've come, and to reevaluate where you're going. Okay, so that is the gist of the general information. I hope that you got out of this that food is essential for life. I hope that you understand when we eat food, food does not just land in our stomach. It moves into our bloodstream and to our cells where we utilize it for energy. And I hope that we don't get lost in diet fads, right? The big picture here, are you eating 2 fruits and 3 vegetables every day? If you're not, then that's where you start, period. Let's save the garbanzo bean pastas, the granola bars or protein bars, the grab and go bars, the quick fixes and cutting corners. Let's save that for later down the road when we become to realize that we might need to do a little bit better planning. But right now, the focus, if you're not doing it already, needs to be eating 2 fruits and 3 vegetables every day and being healthier, right? Because I consider us to all have some degree of health um, or well being, right? So if you want better wellness, think about the one thing that you're going to do today that you didn't yesterday. It's going to get you there because consistency is the key that's going to make or break you. Um, Doing one thing every day that you didn't yesterday will eventually build to a better you and that change that you once only dreamt of. Thank you, everyone.